Orders.
So,
All right, let's call the meeting to order, roll call. Okay. Chair Mine. Here. Vice Chair Jennings.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Yeah.
Commissioner Whedon.
Here.
Commissioner Heck.
Here.
And let the record show that Commissioner Liu is absent. We have, to public comment first, right? Anybody for public comment? Public comment not on the agenda? No. So then do we have a motion to approve meeting on the last one?
Motion to approve the minutes. I'll second it.
Okay, everyone in favor to approve minutes, just raise your hand. Okay, minutes are approved. Right. So we can move on to this item is enforcement ecosystem.
Okay, great. You pull that up on this one.
So we have a working here. You're working here. Okay.
Yeah. So, there's been a few names thrown around for this plan. I want to just address them. I made a comment earlier, being unsure if ecosystem restoration was the right phrase. For consistency's sake, for now, I'm saying we should leave that in there, but I'm certainly gravitating a little bit more to something like ecosystem health, just because you're trying to do restoration as broadly everything, then that's saying that things aren't healthy as they are, and we don't want to be where we were in the past because the climate has changed, so you want to be adaptive. So, and then also the word master plan has been thrown out, and there are some connotations of that sort of being all encompassing, and as we'll see in this presentation, or if you viewed it, flexibility is part of the name of the game. So trying to say, well, it's the plan anyway, so it sort of has the same connotation regardless. Next. So for the overarching goal, I'll just read this out of whatever in here. Help Los Altos work with natural systems by having sufficient habitat for all inhabitants, trees, humans, fish, birds, bugs, etc., to thrive. This is a very value-laden statement. There's another phrasing that one might do, and I've just written this here. Work with natural systems to be able to sustainably enjoy the resources that they provide us. That's a lot more human-centric. This is a much more egalitarian view of what we should do, and I think that orientation can influence, but just to say that even if you were more human-centered in your focus, I think the lessons here still apply. This is what we should do. But just wanted to acknowledge that. Next slide. So some of the risks that we're trying to mitigate through this sort of plan, wildfires is on top of mind for a lot of people, air pollution, heat waves just from the urban heat island effect, flooding, and then big one, the ecosystem address massive plant animal species die off for pathogens or base pests. Just that risk is great in many other areas, and we're lucky to not have anything too severe happen in our area yet on that front, but it's possible, and there are known threats. Next slide. So the proposed clerical pathway in the work plan that we've put forward so far is analysis of current urban canopy, as well as an RFP for the development and implementation of this plan. I think one of the things I definitely want to discuss today is, does this seem right? Are there other? I think there has to be other solutions. We can't just have a plan. And if that plan were really all encompassing, you got great support from all the public, that's great. But not necessarily the end all be all for this to actually work well into the future. Yeah. Next slide. So this is just some examples of things that I think should be addressed, and the line is sort of just to demarcate things where it's more just advice versus things that really need long planning to get any sort of implementation, really needs city buy-in. So guidance, standards of stuff that we can pass on, hopefully people follow, but it's not hard and fast, versus creek restoration that really means bottom liberty. Land use rezoning to actually make sure that we have habitat pathways, similar to, we're aware of I'm blanking on the bird passageway.
For the migration paths or?
No, the migration paths.
Yeah.
That's something that could be worked in, that would be, addressed. Say again?
Pacific Flyway.
Pacific Flyway, thank you, that's. I put down a native and climate ready plant resource program, just to address climate rate. I mean, I've been advocating very strongly for natives for a very long time, and I've certainly come to, hear some people make the argument that certain things are migrating north, some things migrating south, and given the changing climate where we might be in 2100, it's not absurd to try to factor those in and not try to pigeonhole yourself to what's native. So having, again, a little bit of flexibility there seems prudent. And then partnering with other neighborhoods. I mean, we've been sliced out of California in a certain way, but we're not very clearly set with the habitat. There's other areas that we need to be working with to really achieve any of these goals. So, next slide. And then these are just some considerations where I've been studying natural resources that I'm thinking about, and just something to have in mind. I think the last slide is sort of the big thing that I want to get your feedback on, what we're thinking about, what's attainable and what we should be striving for. But just to read out a few of these, allowing space for experimental interventions helps us learn, and just, not making saying we have to do this at this area, sort of having the ability to change and see what's working. Solutions should be adjustable to meet changing conditions. Having incremental milestones, again, make this more realistic, get some momentum. In general, soil and water foundations of life. Just really thinking carefully about how we're using both of those resources, this whole thing. And then connected vertically heterogeneous habitats allow more species to fill a niche, boost resilience. I'm mentioning this specifically because in general, in urban forest plans, people tend to think of this, we want a lot of canopy, we want to get to a canopy percentage, not really thinking about the varied uses that we want, and that shouldn't all just be as tall as possible everywhere. And then this last one, I don't know if anybody had a chance to read the reference, but principles for robust governance. This meant to apply to a landscape scale, but can apply to a regional scale. And these analytic deliberation, just meaning we have data, some arguments can be avoided. You get a little bit more agreement, hopefully, in some cases, if you have actual stuff to look at. Nesting is an interesting point, which is that you actually want some redundancy with roles so that you don't have someone just saying, this is what we should do, and trying to only do it by themselves. You just sort of make sure there's collaboration. And then institutional variety is to say that, yes, you have government, and then you hopefully are also having community groups. And in that way, they're both creating rules. In one case, you're making ordinances potentially. In another case, you're creating the values that people reference. And so if you have those reinforcements from different angles, you might hopefully get better buy-in. And I think the last slide is just discussion.
You want me to keep this written slide up?
You can move around as
Okay.
where people want to go. So, yeah.
No console? No questions? Okay. We have, Gary. Any public comment?
Good evening, everybody. Gary Denton, Los Altos resident, active member of Greentown, Los Altos. We have a summer internship program, as you know, and we have one of the programs this summer that I'll be managing is creating sustainable urban landscape, which ties in very nicely to this. There's a lot of synergy there. We had many applicants. We picked out 3 that rose to the top and decided we would have to offer it to all 3. So what I'd like to do at the June meeting is have them come here, introduce themselves, and tell you what we're trying to do and get your input. So just, we can do public comment for 3 minutes, and you can ask some questions. But, what I think we're gonna try to do is look at what nearby cities are doing. Talk to the nearby organizations like Grassroots Ecology, the Audubon. There's a biodiversity plan for Mountain View, and I'm sure other cities have these things. We'll look at those, see what makes sense for Los Altos, and then present it to the Greentown board and take Zoom, it'll be we'll video it and get it on our YouTube website, on the website. Because I don't think you don't have a meeting in August. And that's when the students.
We don't have one in July, right? July, we don't have.
July. Okay, we're done in July, so. Anyway, we'll have it there, and we can talk about it in August. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
good.
Thanks, Gary.
We did actually put the future agenda item
For
for us
next
to
month.
have for next month.
Yeah,
It
I saw
doesn't
that.
have to be just public comment.
Oh, I
It can be
see.
a presentation that
Good
they can
point.
make and we can.
Well, they will have just started on the Monday of that week, so they won't have a lot done yet. It'll be mostly
It's not meant to be.
what we plan to do.
Right, discussion. All right, let's start. We got the which page? Which one? The
Title?
The title. Maybe. So, yeah. So I agree that restoration is probably not the right thing. We don't want to go back to where we were 50 years ago. The environment is not what it was 50 years ago. So I personally like the thought of saying ecosystem health. I don't know about plan versus master plan discussion. I don't think that. But yeah. Should we just, nobody else have a comment on that?
Well, maybe this was a clarifying question, but what is the goal? Like, when are you trying to have this done by, and what are the elements you're trying to cover in the final plan?
Trying to be as comprehensive as possible and still trying to explore, what are those paths? I mean, it depends on what the capabilities are of, who we envision for this potentially too, so. I think we're working on the timeline of if we were a subcommittee, we would have a year to come up with this and write
Oh, a year?
the RFP,
Okay,
but starting months ago. But we are working hand in pair, so technically there's a little more flexibility at this moment, but
yeah, so you're not looking to complete this by July or August, kind of like the electrification subcommittee. You're trying to put a scope around what you guys are
yeah,
thinking about. Yeah,
yeah. I
so
mean-
a pretty comprehensive plan that's gonna take about a year to get.
Well, no, so we're hoping this year if we could make an RFP to really like nail that down and what are the goals that we want. But the actual land development, I mean, Mountain View's taking longer than they thought they would for their biodiversity plan. We thought that would already be out by now, so, I don't know what to really envision for them. What?
I think they started in 2023.
Yeah, so I don't want a timetable for that just
Yeah.
now, just because again, the bigger this gets. the
I was
harder.
just wondering generally,
Yeah.
that helps a lot. And then, so the RFP you issue, what type of party is responding to that? Like, so,
Believe it's consultants like, SFCEI is the one that's doing the work for Mountain View, and so be looking for consultants that would,
and then their final work product is a plan, ecosystem urban forest and ecosystem restoration plan.
that's the hope.
Okay.
Just, I want to just keep in mind the fiscal years for funding. So. And also keeping in mind the work has to be done in the fiscal year and paid for in the fiscal year.
So do you mean to say that, what deadline do you think that leaves on us then? Are you saying that the plan itself would need to be completed in a year once someone accepts the RFP? Is that?
So it depends on what that RFP ends up being, like RFP, so that's, sorry, jumping in, the RFP itself has to be defined as what it, timeline, what budget is based on what we get, city, guidance from the city.
Mhm.
So what I think, and then we can pull up what we have on the work plan. We have two phases. The first phase is what you have as, understanding what we have right now. So that's something that we have, that's what so but we still need consultants, et cetera, I'm guessing.
Hmm.
And then the second phase is, to have to draft that master plan, which we're hoping gets done in 2026, but I think the RFP will have to decide what that will take, right? And then the next goal would be, the implementation of that master plan, I think should be, at least the way it's written in the cap, should be up until 2035 to meet the goal.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean that it ends there. What should be the horizon? But, that's at least the horizon that cap intended.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but-
but,
No, I just want to hear
So
what Connie.
what I said is still stands.
Yes,
is that,
yeah.
yeah, like whatever, so keep that in mind. So if we get their budgeting for funds now for next fiscal year, which starts July 1st, 2026.
Mhm.
So whatever phase you want to do needs to be completed by June 30th, 2027. Does that make sense? So right now, we're in fiscal year 2024-25,
Mhm.
and it's gonna end June 30th, 2025.
Mhm.
And whatever money isn't spent in any department or any city funds is like a use it or lose, it's a use it or lose it policy.
Right.
I don't know, if it's not something, I think there has to be discussions on if it's carried over, I don't know how that works. So right now, they're having budget talks for next fiscal year,
Uh-huh.
just 25-26. That starts July 1st, 2025. So if it's gonna take a year to come up with any services or RFP, the money wouldn't be used for that, and they're gonna have to go back to the table and re-budget and rediscuss that for the next fiscal year.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I guess my question is like. I mean, I can imagine there'd be money for the RFP you request, right? And then you're going to request money, the city will request money to actually implement, or sorry. The RFP for the consultant, so that may cost some money to run the RFP, then there'll be money for the consultant. And that'll probably be in the following fiscal year, and then there'll be money for plan implementation, which will be a multi-year budget. And I imagine you lay this out. Once you get through the RFP, but then that money should be earmarked or at least highlighted for each.
Yeah.
Each year, but I don't think you guys, you might know roughly what that is, and you should probably outline it if it is. If you do know it, like just start putting buckets down so Nick can see it and say, hey, we're gonna ask for 100,000 this year, 200,000 next year, and $1 million the following year.
so since this is related, maybe we can pull up the master plan, just that section, because
Which one?
that what's at the end. Not the master plan, sorry, the work plan.
Oh, yes.
We're probably planning. We're planning all the time. Cause, I did update it slightly from, the plan we had presented to council based on some guidance from, last year. And some guidance from Nick and Gabe. So we just. And we'll talk about the priorities, so I put that as a priority 1, and then. So the phase 2 is what we expect to get done this year, would be all the analysis, maybe some, whatever, and it doesn't have to be. Exactly what's listed here, right, so we're working there, to define what that is. And that money, depending on how much we get, all of it would be spent on getting to the point of the RFP and hiring a consultant, and then there is a request for additional money, which goes in next year's, sorry, so, and this is talking about calendar years. Since we make our work plan for calendar years. So this would be, maybe if we start with the RFP and consultant starts in 2025, once that work would go on 2025, 26. Oh, right, through the end of 2026, according to this.
But it sounds
The
like
rough plan, right? So,
pay the consultant in time, then they can keep working regardless.
right, so that would be, yeah, that would be however it's structured. So I don't expect that we get all of this money in this cycle, but it's guidance for the city manager to propose and the development director
Yeah, so
Nick,
they can
to
earmark
then
it.
propose, yeah, so then they can earmark and say, okay, we're approving this general project. And this is what we expect this year, what we expect next year, or what people allow this year, what people allow next year.
So they can earmark it, but if it's not gonna be used in the fiscal year, then there's no funding that has gone to a project in that fiscal year is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
make clear. So it sounds like the plan isn't gonna be for a year, so there won't be funds used for next fiscal year. And I don't think the commission wants that, right?
so all these funds are not expected to be used, I mean, the 150 plus 300, not expected to be used in this fiscal year budget.
This fiscal year
No.
being, hold on. this
25, 26, the one that comes in July, correct?
fis- That starts in July, so
So
you're not asking for any money starting,
that's what,
We're
For a year?
asking for money starting in July, but all of this money is not going to be in that July to July.
it looks like,
And
I see.
some of that money will be in the.
part of the
26, 27
150,000.
budget. Yeah, that should be all in this. That's what we're asking, and the second pot
Would
would
be the
be
pot.
some of it here and some of it next fiscal year. Again, we don't know what.
But it
council
sounds like one thing we need to nail down is,
Yeah.
for Tanya, is like, what is that number that we're asking for and for what? In the next 30 days? Like,
no, so we have the 50,000 for
No, I
this
know.
fiscal year.
When I say in 30 days,
Oh.
you have to have the answer in 30 days, so it's budgeted for next year.
I think they're already budgeting based on this.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
But I don't know if they understand that it's not gonna be used next fiscal year. So that, I think there might be miscommunication.
I had a discussion with the city manager.
Okay,
Seemed to me that he understood,
okay.
but
I
I
guess-
but I don't know if he was only he would only go for the phase 2 for this budget, or if he will include some money for phase 3 to ask from council. Again, it depends on what budget they have. I don't expect all of it to get funded.
Okay.
Oh, we may, but we shouldn't expect all of it to get funded.
I guess what I'm trying to say for the commission's sake is when we're coming up with a work plan, I guess, so we could have budgeted for this like in the future. And we could have asked for funds for next fiscal year. So it sounds like there's some funds being asked for building electrification, right?
Mhm.
So that will be used in next fiscal year. But this won't be used, it might be used, So it's, I think to keep in mind is that you can ask for funds that you're gonna use in the next fiscal year. So that they don't think that you're using, if you're not using it in that fiscal year. They're gonna have to like talk about it again and budget for it again, keep it in the books. Which is fine, but I don't want them to think that. We're using that, so we could have asked for more funds that we're gonna use for next fiscal year is what.
Right, and that's what we think we did. So if there is a misunderstanding, then maybe you have to communicate back and clarify, with the city manager.
Well, it doesn't sound like there's gonna be something put together. But is it a year?
We're talking about the RFP.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was I was thinking of it under the calendar year, just because that's basically our cycle for our assignments, but
So from today,
yeah,
I
So you
think we'll
would
have
get
an
ready for
RFP in
the
the
RFP, right? You wouldn't. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, I guess what I'm a little confused about is you're worried that the RFP wouldn't be made in time, or just like we're asking for it a year late? Is that,
I'm just saying that if city funds are spent within a fiscal, are used and spent in a fiscal year.
yeah,
So if a year from today,
yeah,
we don't have an RFP, we're
Yeah.
moving on, we'll be passing the next fiscal year already.
right,
So those funds wouldn't be used in the upcoming fiscal year.
right,
So.
So I'm just saying, keep that in mind when you're thinking about the timeline, so
Sure.
that we can make use of the funds and then ask for different funds for a different fiscal year.
yeah,
So the other guidance from the city manager was that our role is to prioritize and tell council what is priority. And then if council agrees with that priority, it is the staff's, role to figure out the budget that's needed to, to make that priority a success. So our goal, we could put estimates of what we think it might cost. It's not set in stone because we're not experts on the finances and we don't know exactly the details. So this is again, an estimate or what we think might be needed, but it's not limited to just this. And for this amount of time. So that's,
I think staff needs more, not the monetary, but the timeline.
Mhm.
That would be, I think, helpful to know what we're budgeting for and when. Even though I'm not involved in that process, but I just wanna
Mhm.
set us up for
Right,
success.
right.
So a timeline would be helpful, because if we were, I guess if we were talking about a timeline a few months back, then I could have given that advice, is like, well, what are we asking for to use next?
Okay,
fiscal
so if
year?
we go back, maybe I can explain one more time and then we can move on. Well, we can discuss. So with the phase one that's done, phase two, it says to be completed in 2025. Again, that's an estimate, which would be get ready for the RFP. And then phase three would be some part of 2025 if they're ready. And through 2026, so calendar year 2026. And that's the estimate of the budget, so. Phase two and phase three currently are estimated to start in 2025, whenever we get started, and then end by the end of 2026, so which includes fiscal year 2025, 26, and some part of fiscal year 26, 27. But that assessment for what exactly we think would be needed for that next budget, again, I guess we'll go in the work plan, but this is kind of letting them know that we expect this project to run beyond this fiscal year, but it may not be completely clear to the city manager and council, which, if we're confused, maybe I could write a note to them explaining more clearly. Does that make sense?
that's one clarifying question, for the next,
We're discussing.
okay, yeah, the next time that budgets will come up, when would that be, Anya, so that just can think of that date as when we need to be getting information to you, rather than,
I think they start in March.
okay,
And they end in June.
Yeah, they're like finalizing it right now.
Yeah.
So our work plan that we presented in January was guidance towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should be roughly covered.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I can provide.
anyone have any thoughts on some of the objectives or other comments?
Yeah,
Did we go to the
Okay,
next
cool.
slide?
So, I mean, on your kind of
Planning to-
implicit question, I like that it doesn't say master plan now, I feel like it's a bit more realistic. Another word I thought of is sometimes considered synonyms, apart from restoration, regeneration, which doesn't give the impression that you're going to restore it to how it was before, arguably. So just something to bear in mind. I like the overarching goal. Good reminder that we're not the only people, oh, sorry, we are the only people, but we're not the only inhabitants of Los Altos. And then on the objectives, I kind of like the idea of kind of rally the city and its residents behind creek restoration. I was very inspired by Rick Lamon's presentation to us. And I feel like something like that could make ecosystem restoration a lot more tangible and visible for something where I think a lot of people in Santos get a lot of value and a lot of memories from our creeks. And so the idea that these could be perennial, I think is something that a lot of people would rally behind in theory. So I like all the objectives. I feel like you captured the essence of the plan that we had. I just want to say I have particular fondness for the creek restoration.
Can I have a comment on the goal? So I like this goal. I think as being related to the cap, we should add how it adds to the cap as well.
I
As
just
a
felt
goal.
like
And this is a goal, I get it, this is, yeah. and it's-
needed to call out and
Yeah.
something that.
So we should make sure to tie it back to how it.
Yeah,
relates to the
I think if we eventually get to the point of this meeting.
Yeah,
but
and
doesn't
which you
count
have in
that.
the, yes, which you have in the next page, as in, you know. Wildfires. Whatever, heat island effect, all that other stuff, that's listed is a goal that will be to the cap, so. That's kind of what we're. Maybe, working towards. Anything else we put down? I think I have one more thing. Yeah, so here, the proposed critical paths. So is that analysis of current urban canopy the only thing you need before the RFP? Because we listed a bunch of things on page 2.
No, not ideally.
Surveys, discussing and community input, all that stuff, is
I
that?
mean, that would
Also-
hopefully be part of what the agency or consultant that we get would help with. I don't think it would. We should all be trying to tackle that all by ourselves, but you know, in this case, I was trying to just closely match what we had on the work plan, but
In the work plan, there was mention of ecosystem health assessment. Do I remember that correctly? Would you say urban canopy covers that completely?
no, it depends on the consultant, or so, yeah, who we get for that, if they think they can work that in some way.
Would it be? That you may need a consultant for the free part, a different consultant will help you. Like maybe Canopy or the, days, good at the towns would do for, you know, not building a master plan, but getting the base data. To kind of figure out where we are, how bad, you know. How much do we need, you know, how far away from healthy are we? To get to healthy, that may guide what goes into the RFP.
Yeah, potentially, I need to do a little more research into like what sort of partners are out there and see if it would make sense to separate those.
So yeah, so I'm thinking that we may need a little bit more that will guide what. The scope of the RFP or what the consultant who's developing the master plan would do.
Yeah.
And just a comment on, what was the word you had instead of health and restoration?
Regeneration.
Regeneration. So my only comment on that is that assumes that it's. At 0, right, doesn't it? At least it gives the combination, so I. Be hopeful that we're not at 0. But like,
Always get worse.
I saw we had ducks at the creek by Food Park, I was like, there's this.
There's a microfree keys, but
Come on, this-
when there's water in the keys are there.
Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
health is,
Just a,
But that sort of stuff can also change based on.
Yeah. yeah, and then, yeah, the RFP itself. Call for something else at a time.
I also like the term ecosystem health and because it's more than the canopy, especially if you're looking at the goal about bugs and stuff. And the example is, you know, we've put in a native garden, but we still have some non-native plants in our house. And it's interesting to know that the bees really like the native stuff and the ornamental things that came from somewhere else, they don't get as much attention. And so if you're really looking at the ecosystem health, you're looking at not only open spaces that are city belong, tree spaces, but you're also looking at your backyards, you know, the property. So I think that if that's the objective, then I think you have to look more than urban canopy.
So I think you have that listed there for the advice for residents, is that good?
If you want to go to the objective slide, yeah, I mean, these are just ideas. I think there's a lot of other things we could potentially add here, but yeah, I think you would have something along the lines of it, sort of a residence guidance, because the reality is we are a lot of private property, so, you know, that's not gonna change quickly, so.
And you may, whoever the consultant is, may be looking at sort of three different areas, you know, treescapes and open space and developed, if that's their residential space.
Or it may be a continuum.
Yeah, it's not my expertise, but you know, if your goal's broad, make sure you're looking at your objectives in the same
So I
way.
just, if I jump in while it says on, I forget, I also like the native and climate ready plant resource program. I tried to grow natives, only natives in spots, and it's really hard, partly because we're not really a native landscape anymore, like natives didn't have a house next door that was shade at certain point, or runoff from the roof or whatever, so when I mix in some non-natives with the natives, that, you know, those that do well here, I feel like everything seems to be better over time. So I like the idea of not just focusing on native, that locks you into a particular thing that may
Yeah.
not be relevant, may not be the best thing for where we are now.
Right, yeah, the one distinction I wanna make is, you know, because we're a Mediterranean climate, we end up with a lot of stuff from plants from South Africa and Australia, even around right here. That that is not a
Yeah.
natural migration that we have caused. I mean, whatever, we are natural, but you know what I mean. So, yeah, there is a distinction that I wanna make with that term. But, cool. Well, I feel like I'm good with referring to it as ecosystem health plan moving forward. I mean, mentioned your first as well, but I feel like that. Felt like we got an overall consensus for that. Yeah, questions, Tony?
What are next steps?
Well, I will be going something about the Santa Clara urban forest plan this week, so I will be trying to figure out, you know, what can we learn from that, how to integrate that, and I think there just needs to be a lot of we'll have to try to meet with stakeholders in other cities and trying to get a better idea of what's out there, and then I have to think a little bit longer about when we come back and actually say, okay, we're ready for the RFP, but that is the goal we work towards.
Okay, so I'm looking at, City of Mountain View's page for their plan, and it looks like they have like a timeline, so they had a project kickoff, they have policy and precedent review, which I'm not sure what precedent review is.
Mhm.
Then they looked at existing conditions, opportunities and constraints, then they did community engagement, and then they started to develop a plan.
Yeah.
And then there was, after the plan, there's the draft plan review and input, and then plan adoption.
Yeah.
So are you thinking that we're gonna be following a similar timeline to that, or?
I mean, I noticed that their consultant helped with that outreach, and so I don't mean to presume that we passed that. I think that is a big step, and that's certainly why I wanted to make sure at this meeting I got this out there. So hopefully, if anybody does watch this, they can forward some thoughts for getting conversation going.
Well, so whatever other cities have, master plan, we could to look at. Like Mountain View maybe slightly more complex than us, because they have all the Bayland, et cetera. Roads. Not to say that. All right, so should we close this topic? Move on to electrification.
Yeah, and then I just also want to add in that the Santa Clara County is doing their own urban forest master plan. I don't know if everyone knows about that, but I think it's just for unincorporated parts. So it'd be good to also, if we're doing that congruently, see how it aligns.
Yeah. That's the thing I said, I'm going to an event about that
Oh, you're going
this
to
week,
that.
yeah. So I will be more informed on that shortly.
Order question? Be closed? No. Did you have a comment to make on anything? On the topic, so, the first topic?
Are you making any public comment today on, which agenda item?
In electric shuttle service?
Okay, so if you wanna, have a speaker come on, that's this one. You can just sort this out, not get it too.
So, question, that's not something that's specifically on the agenda. Could we allow the comment when it's not on the agenda?
If that time is already passing.
Right, so I'm just wondering, if we make an exception and allow a comment when we're doing commissioner updates?
That would violate the Brown Act, so would the, can't, not really make that exception.
Okay, so,
So it's not regarding electrification. Sorry, I think I misheard what she said about it, was number movie. So it's gonna have to wait till the next meeting.
yeah, I should have told the others, so the public comments come at the beginning of the meeting. So that, that time for looking at public comments, something that's not specifically on the agenda is passed. However, since I did have a discussion, on this, I can update, as part of commissioner update. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, but I'm
Oh,
glad
this is
you're
Chloe. Oh, nice, okay.
I'm Zooming, right? Yes. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
You can also email. the
Yeah.
thing
Yeah, you can.
So that we can see it,
Okay,
what you were gonna say.
should I go still review this public comment for next one?
No, unless you want it to be like said in the public meeting.
Yeah, we'll have another
You
meeting.
can do, it'll come up in June.
Okay.
Sorry about
Okay, electrification update? What's next? So before we begin, can I say, is it a funding? Can I say what, a discussion with the city manager was about ad hoc subcommittees on this?
I think we saw the email.
Yeah,
So one of us has to be voted off the island.
So two things. One is that, yes, since we're only 6 of us are seated, any subcommittee more than 2 is, not. Cannot be a subcommittee. And then the other thing is, generally, the city manager was indicating that if it's related to something we've talked about before, which would include anything that's in the cap, we could not form a subcommittee on that, so we have to be working pairs, so I've asked to have a clarification directly with the city attorney. So until we have that clarification, everybody, whatever we do will be either an individual commissioner or working pair if it's related to the cap. So I'm not saying that somebody has to be voted off, we can divide the work and then, a working pair can work on one part and commissioner can work. We can do on another part, or however we decide, makes sense.
Well, I think we want to keep moving, so what I would do is let. I'd see if they're agreeable, I'd let Colin and Tom be the working pair. I could assist in some other way, but I wouldn't work with them, they'd be just a working pair. On this subject, and then that would negate the maturations and how to figure it out.
So I get that's clarification, because I heard that we're only allowed to form subcommittees with maximum 2 people.
Until we have our 7th commissioner.
And this was.
So if we're only 6, then 3 is half.
Okay,
And then the second question.
and we're the only subcommittee, ad hoc subcommittee right now, so it only affects the building electrification one. So that's, okay, and the timeline for having a new commissioner is when?
I don't think it's till they do the next round of.
September, right? Which is 3 more meetings. In August, maybe 2 more. But you know, I think practically it's okay. I mean, I think our goal is to get this mostly knocked out by next meeting. And so Don should weigh in on this meeting on everything we've done. I think it's kind of weird not to. And then moving forward, Coleman and I, I'm thinking that's what Don wants. I think that's what Coleman agrees to do.
Yeah, I think and the reason why I do that is some of the ideas that are generated, you know, are more in the wheelhouse of what the 2 of you have been talking about than the wheelhouse that discussion, so it's sort of.
Unless reach codes all of a sudden came to the forefront, then
Right.
Then it could
then it
be-
would, then it might make sense for Don to step back in sometimes.
Then it could be a different working pair.
Yeah, or an individual contributor.
So I
So,
think that's what we had originally in the work plan, as 2 different things, and
we combine them.
we combined it so that we could have a subcommittee. Maybe we can go back and have.
Well, why don't we go through today?
Yeah, let's
I
go
think
through
it
it.
kind of, and then, and if we, I don't think we need to make the call now. Don and I and Colton can talk after the meeting in the next day or so, but we have to decide now. Okay, after the presentation?
My thought would be that we should not proceed with any, anything that is a subcommittee of 3 people speaking on one subject. So I think we should have 2 people present.
Then I'll add my comments.
And
as
then
an
one,
individual.
and then one person can present separately. So
I'll add my comments
just,
as an
just be
individual,
careful.
just to
Yeah.
keep us going.
Yeah.
I'll step back and be an individual commissioner and I'll add comments on the presentation
Okay,
or questions and comments.
Okay, so then I guess it is, Cole, make sure you add, I'll go ahead and leave this if you want, and then you, I mean, and then you add comments.
Sure.
So just, what we've done here is we took our presentation, from last time, which were, if you recall, we kind of fleshed out some basic ideas. And we've gone back, we talked about them, we researched them a little bit over the last 3 days. And we've kind of prioritized them, at least roughly in buckets, like something we probably will do, something we might do pending a little more research, and something we're probably not gonna do based on what we know already. And so what we've done is just simply color coded our prior presentation to give you that, our thoughts, and then we want to get your feedback on each one of those line items or anything you want to provide feedback on during this presentation or at the end of the presentation. So having said that, just to reiterate, these were our objectives. Keep it simple, nothing has changed there. This is the exact same. So we can move to the next slide. So one of the topics is policy, providing ordinances and guidelines, or asking the council to vote on ordinances and guidelines for the city. 2 top items are still in process. We're still looking at those. We have looked at those, but we're still continuing to run through what neighboring cities and other California cities are doing. We most likely will certainly align with that at the end of the day. One thing we have come, I think, we're a little negative on is adopting any more reach codes at this stage, and there's a number of reasons for that. Number one, the city is risk averse, and reach codes have become slightly risky. And so we don't think there's a lot of city tolerance for reach codes. At this point, that could change depending on the legal environment, but right now it's risky. And there is a California law under consideration anyway that would preclude reach codes. We're not sure exactly what that looks like, but we know it does preclude reach codes, and either based on any change in the building code and maybe even the kind of environmental options we were looking at, the nitrous oxides limits in a house. So they could cover, that could cover both that. So I think right now the feeling is we will not look at reach codes. Did I summarize that right, Cole?
Yeah, Matt.
Okay. The other item we had on this section was requiring energy audits when you get a city permit. And I think we are slightly negative on that. That is not something that comes up as a priority right now. And if I recall correctly, it was because of the potential costs and the complications that could introduce into the process. And I wish you guys could feedback again. Okay. So on incentives, on encouraging electrification through incentives, we're going to continue to research other cities. One of the items was to have a city-funded bucket of cash that we would add to other federal and state incentives or local utility incentives. But I think we're slightly negative to that because we don't really think the magnitude of what Los Altos could provide would move the needle. We don't fundamentally feel like it's an incentive issue. It's more of an understanding what the incentives are and how to get them. And again, that could change because it's in yellow, but right now that is not a primary focus. We also have some good conversations going with Palo Alto and some other cities that have done that. And we'll get some better data once we finish those discussions. So those, that is probably a no. Paul, am I? Yep. And then all the other items we are still looking at and are hopeful. We are trying to get a meeting with Veronica in the next period to discuss these with her. I know she was out last week, right? Or this week. So hopefully that'll happen in the next couple weeks. But all these are still on the table. Permit fees, reducing permit fees or eliminating them for electrification projects, considering variances, which to either the envelope of the house or doing something to making the development more valuable if you electrify. expediting permit reviews. And then we can get to the last point, whether that's more of an update supporting the city's RFP. We have a broader update on that, which we can do at, like, staff update, right?
I can just do that.
Okay.
Presentation.
Okay. Colin, did I get through all that?
Doing
All right,
way too good a job. It's fine.
This is awesome. And then on community engagement, specifically education and outreach, there were a number of items we had here. I think we were kind of not really huge advocates of promoting the SBC yard sign campaign because we're not sure how effective that would be. But we do like these other ideas, promoting free home energy audits, distributing some educational materials at the building department. So when somebody's coming in for a permit or looking at development, having electrification items right there, maybe from SVECE, maybe from the town, but whatever the case, having those materials readily available, both in hard copy and in a website. We think there's plenty of opportunity to use the weekly newsletter and the town crier for outreach with well-placed articles. We're already hosting an electrification fair. I heard it was awesome the last one, so we can build on that and do more there. This other one seemed like it might be outside, at least thus far, it seems like it might be outside the lane of what the city should be doing. That doesn't mean we won't promote it, but maybe that's something we can leverage SVCE or PG&E, some of the activities they already have instead of doing that ourselves. And then finally, one of the big helps is that SVCE is actually doing a lot of things we have in our previous RFP. And our goal is to promote that pretty substantially. That's one of the main tenets, in fact, of the plan, is to help educate the residents and that this program does exist. They have an electrification program, an advisory program, and we need to make sure our residents understand that that service is available. That's it.
So I'll just add to this so I think I gave an update last month about the RFP that we only got one and it was way over budget, so. In terms of using the 50,000, which was allocated for building electrification, that's the only thing we can use it for. We don't have time to go out for an RFP, because like I said, you have to use the funds within the fiscal year, and the fiscal year ends 6/30/25. So, I worked with the subcommittee and we came up with some ideas, which are basically these ideas. So we're going to use some of that funding to create the educational flyers with the city's consultant graphic designer. And so we'll essentially do a communication plan, and taking apart each part of the plan instead of going for an RFP. Try to figure out where we can pay for the services now. I think the only thing that isn't listed on here is like a speaker series. So I've been going back and forth with Octera to get an estimate on how much they would charge for speaker series so that we can do an electrification so we can do workshops and webinars on that. So it'll be led by a like an expert on specific topics. I think some of the ones we came up with were how to get started with home electrification, understanding rebates, asking an electrification expert. And then those would be recorded and put on our website and stuff like that. And then there was another idea of having an induction cooktop checkout program, so that we can buy the single stovetop induction cooktops. So we can buy them in this fiscal year and then maybe create a program or use them as giveaways. And stuff like that, but that is something I want the commission to weigh on. If you approve of that. But as terms of using the whole 50,000 for this fiscal year, I don't think we're going to be able to do that. And yeah, that's just.
But the good news is like, we don't really need to because the scope of the RFP, that was for the RFP, but that scope has changed quite a bit because SBC is doing this already, so.
So yeah, the goal, would be to point to SVC's Go Electric Advisor, which is a concierge service. And then once we get the person to their SVC can troubleshoot or triage, I guess, I'm like, okay, we have this program, you can do this, you can do that. So we can jump to clarifying questions and then discussion.
So questions, is there a limit, there's a limit where, money can be spent without an RFP? I think it used to be 5,000, do we know what that limit is, if there is such a limit?
I think it's 50,000.
So that amount of money can be spent without an RFP by staff.
Yeah, it would just be considered like services. Probably like a sole source. Because essentially it's contingent on how many people actually can provide such a service. So it has to just be justified that way, or there's the informal process where you get quotes informally, not through the RFP.
One other, I guess, clarifying question, you said that, supporting additional city-based incentives, is not recommended.
Probably, that's where we're leaning right now,
Okay.
not fine with it yet.
Okay.
This was based on some anecdotal feedback from other cities on basically their experience with providing layering incentives. And the sentiment was that the main problem is people, first of all, those that are aware do it, but most people are just not aware of the rebates and are intimidated by the process of applying for the rebates. So that's the rationale behind it.
You mentioned, you know,
No, I was just
Okay.
wondering if we got into discussion, but.
you mentioned house variances, now the sticking point, with the work from the last subcommittee, so I would love. Could you expand on what variances you're looking at right now?
The same.
Not the same,
Uh,
okay.
And I think, because I think what happened is, if I recall correctly, we talked about variances, we were gonna dig down a little more, but it got taken to the council, so we never really flushed it out. So I think the objective here is to flush those out with Veronica and make sure there are legal reasons. You know, I think the excuse was, well, we're not sure we can do that legally, but we never had a hard answer on that. So I think the idea is to chase that down, to the ground and make sure we can and cannot do it. Right now, I don't think we have a hard answer whether we can or cannot do it. It was very, the answer was very vague last time.
Okay, discussion, public comment, oh, sorry. Is it public comment? Let's see, I didn't see Gary over there. Yeah, discussion. You want to go first? It's just us.
Don, you can say it.
Okay. So, I'll, based on my discussions with, the city manager, and some guidelines from, vice mayor, their understanding of the budget that was, allocated, the 50K last year, was for incentives. So I don't know whether that's exactly what they meant or that was how it was translated to us. So I think they're liking the idea of incentives, or they're thinking that's So if we're going away from incentives. Or we should consider that a little bit more,
Yeah.
'cause there might be additional money coming yearly for incentives, if there's an
They
incentive
have-
program that can be put in
Yeah.
place.
I think I've heard from the council several times. They like the idea of incentives,
Hmm.
but I mean, to at least, I think $50,000 of incentives for a whole city won't do anything. Uh, and I think that's what we're trying to get, what we haven't done is really scope out what our neighboring cities are doing and whether it's moving the needle. I think our gut is, if you're gonna move the needle, you need to at least, it's gotta be like $1,000, right? And so that starts to add up quite quickly. And whether that even moves the needle is another question, because you're throwing $1,000 on potentially 2,000 to 5,000 of incentives that already exist from federal and state and SBCE incentives. So does it really move the needle? And I think our gut is it doesn't. And we can explain that to the city council if that's gonna be one of the questions, and I'm sure it will be. But again, that's what I think we need to do a little more work, but our gut is it doesn't.
So, I guess maybe just going on.
Yeah.
If that's okay. Okay.
I can add a little bit, having looked at the Silicon Valley Clean Energy website and stuff. If you go there and you click on the rebate program, they have a special tab where now Mountain View and Milpitas sweeten
Mhm.
Silicon Valley Clean Energy rebate. And the one that Mountain View is offering, it goes from 2,000 to 4,000 if you replace your heat pump, if you replace a gas water heater with a heat pump water heater.
Mhm.
And I believe Los Altos Hills is looking at doing the same
Mhm.
type of thing. But I think that the comment is if you take 50,000 and if it's 2,000. You know, if you're looking at that order of magnitude by sweetening it, it's 25 water heaters.
Mhm.
You know,
But is that,
and the problem becomes is it, rather than the money, it may be more the knowledge and the help in going through the process may be more beneficial than offering somebody $1,000 who's already inclined to do the work, but trying to just navigate the how to do it. And I think navigating the how to do it may be more important than providing another $1,000 or whatever the number might be.
so the other, when we. And all from the discussion with SVCE is that they had budget for a limited number. Of rebates, and once that runs out, so it's whatever first, however many. Applications come in, get that money, and then, and then it's done, so. There is, SVC itself has a limited number, I might be questioning the data, but. So. I wonder if there is still a way to. Not necessarily use the entire money, still maybe do some of the other things. But to maybe partner with SVCE to stretch that money that they have a little bit. So it feels more meaningful, or maybe because there, if you can look at things like. What is a higher impact, like is it HVAC, another $1,000 for that, or if it's something that really makes. Someone think about, if there's pool, thinking $10,000 to spend, and I'm getting 1,000 from SEC, I'm getting, whatever, 1,000 from you, whatever it is. So I'm wondering if that's something to like discuss with SEC, understand what their limits are. And then how we could stretch that, and then definitely use more money to talk to.
My understanding was that was how they were designing the program. In that they had to make an assumption on how many projects they were going to do.
Mhm.
So I think what was less clear was if they got to the end of that or they exhausted that quickly, would they follow it with something similar? I didn't think that was clear. And the other point I'll make is obviously for SVCE, it's not just looking at Los Altos, but the whole area, the whole catchment area.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, that's good guidance, and I think, I don't want to steal thunder, but I think the intent is also to get SVC to the commission to report out on the program and how it's going and what stage they're at, so hopefully they can answer some of those questions as well.
I also don't wanna sound like a broken record, but I don't think that we could create a incentive program and they'd have to, I don't think it'd work in 2 months. Those things, the money.
What do you think is the biggest hiccup that would prevent that from happening?
Well, they would have to request the incentive and do the work, like we've come up with like what that looks like.
People would have to get the incentive in
Yeah,
2
we'll
months.
get it in 2 months.
Yeah,
And that's like we could just move on to one of us. I think that would be-
Just kind of, I know, I don't know if it's legal, of course, could the city give, you know, a fund or a grant to SVCE to specifically use for additional Los Altos homes? So just my notes from the January meeting is that over 3 years, they were targeting 350 market rate total in the area they serve, and 250 below market rate homes. So I
Another
don't
market
know.
rate was people with a certain, under a certain income.
Yeah,
threshold.
yeah.
When you say, homes,
So I
is that?
don't know if it's homes or if it's projects or because they have different things. But yeah, seems
No,
like,
but
you know,
either way.
it's not an infinite amount of money that.
Either way, that's definitely data we need to get. I wasn't aware there was a limit. I mean, I assumed there was a limit, but I didn't know it was a low limit, but that's something we need to understand also. So, I mean, is that something we can ask them about or?
I can ask them.
Okay, yeah, but what is their budget in terms of dollars and homes?
I think we have to ask more questions because I
Yeah.
think you may be referring to a special program,
Yeah.
not the
Right,
general
yeah.
rebate
No, yeah.
program.
You need to understand it's soup to nuts.
Yeah, I'm just,
I think that was a
We have to
special
file-
niche, you know, of demonstration projects or
I
whatever,
think that was the full service demo for it.
full service demonstration, rather than just the basic rebates. I think that we should continue to look at this as just it's cautionary because if you only have so much money, where are you gonna direct it? Maybe better to direct it in area A rather than area B. And I think that's the caution flag that Coleman and Tom are raising.
at the same time, if council allocates that money specifically for rebates, then maybe it's a good idea to have a plan of how that money. can be
What,
used.
have they allocated money for, is that, I mean, and if so, how much? I mean, that would be
So-
good data to have, yeah.
My no, again, this is all anecdotal, because I heard, I didn't, that the money, the 50,000 was actually allocated for rebates, incentives or
Did
something.
you, I don't remember that, but,
I don't either.
yeah,
That was what
no, actually.
vice mayor and the city manager,
City, what about
Seem to
Nick? I
recall.
mean, Nick is the one who said we have $50,000 set for a RFP.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, again, this is something to clarify.
Yeah.
And just to be careful to know ahead of time.
Should we
If
clarify it with Mesa? I mean, is that,
I think the city manager. maybe?
or do we need to
Why don't you
clarify it?
talk to Nick about the communication plan, that wasn't brought up to me.
Okay, I mean, yeah, sure.
I can go back and.
It'd be just good to clarify and make sure that, you know,
But we have to keep in mind the time,
yes.
Yeah.
the timeline that.
Yeah, I mean, if there's things to, I would definitely continue with whatever plan you've already.
Yeah,
come up with.
I think Mesa wasn't around, wasn't part of the, I'm sure it was around, but not part of the environmental commission. So that was really Nick, I would trust Nick because he was the one who's. made
Well,
the
this
call.
is referring to the budget setting meeting that they would have had last year. in June.
Mhm.
So,
This is for 50,000 that was applying for the RFP, which we no longer planning to spend, or is this another 50,000?
It's we only have 50,000.
50,000.
We won 50,000.
There's a lot similar on the fiscal years.
Yeah, so we should
Okay.
just clarify, so. That's
I
what I heard.
I
and
think
was
we talked
surprised.
before spending, go ahead and spending it.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't stop what the plan is, but clarify for the record.
I'm clarifying that we should be using the 50,000 for incentives.
That we're not using it for incentives, and that's okay.
That it's okay to use it for this stuff, given we didn't get.
Okay.
Yeah, just say, hey, Nick, we're targeting this to meet what we were gonna do with the RFP in different ways, but we're not using it for incentives. That's not.
Which he knows.
Yeah, okay.
He knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's enough.
Clarifying question though, Tanya. So you, sound like you said you don't think we're gonna be able to spend the whole amount. How much,
I don't know.
could you estimate how much you think we will be able to spend of it?
It depends on, Arcturus proposal on those speaker sheets. I guess the question I have for the commission is, what do you want to spend money on these items? If you can give me kind of like some guidelines, so the educational materials
I think that would be good, but
will,
I wanna go back to our discussion earlier about the incentives, just because, while I agree with Don, your point of it generally not moving the needle, depending on how much is left over, if there's a very clearly defined window that's available, I think that could get some people to go, oh, like, if there's only 15 slots, oh, maybe this is something I haven't looked at before, but like, this is the window. I mean, I can tell you with solar, when that NEM agreement came up, that was a reason to go, oh, maybe I should get solar now. And so this feels like a similar opportunity. If we're able to put that out there, I think it could get out there in a good way organically and get picked up. So
I mean, is it literally enough time for?
you would have to develop the incentive program, probably run it by a bunch of legal people and finance people.
I mean.
oh, that's why my question was earlier. It's like, what do we think is the big hiccup and like, what are the,
Yeah, 2 months just isn't a practical timeline to do something. like that.
The city,
That's my-
yeah, the city giving away money, I think probably has a lot of strings. My guess is there's a lot of strings attached with it. You have to go through
A lot of approvals.
yeah, a lot of
We have to
bureaucracy.
come up with a process that finance has to approve. So that is the big,
okay.
the biggest, like, how do you actually implement that? And then the marketing of it, and then people signing up and completing the work before June 30th, 2025.
I would still suggest to talk to SPCE, because
That
something
part I
that
agree
you
with.
can
So like,
push.
say we do some of the stuff and we still have 30 grand left or whatever. Of budget, then we could go to SEC and say, hey, we're gonna prepay next year, we're gonna get this money for next year's incentives for just for Los Altos. That I can imagine we could do. But we need to start talking, yeah, I imagine that, you know, the bureaucracy more than I do.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never done that before. I'm not sure the city has, so we'd have to ask. There's probably gonna need to be a contract,
Yeah.
and then the contract needs to go through all the.
I mean, ignorant
Steps.
question, what happens with the budget that's left over? I guess it just gets absorbed back into.
Yeah, it just goes back.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think, I'll comment on your list. I think you have a good list, Tanya, of things that are implementable now. Pardon me?
I can't take all the credit, because I'll team up with that.
Well, I think it's a good list to implement, what you can effectively do in the time that you have remaining. Certainly brochures and announcements and, you know, that takes design development time and everything like that. And if you can get some of that done now, that's great, I think. And I don't remember the whole list, but I didn't, there wasn't any flag there that then when you were describing them down, you know, I thought they were all solid. And it's a matter, you know, speaker series or whatever, those are all good ideas. It's a matter of can they be implemented and can you effectively do them in the timeline that you have remaining?
So if the speaker series is gonna cost, let's say 20-30,000 for them to put on 3. Cause I think I talked to Aptera and they said they're doing something for Mountain View. And I think they're for 3 workshops, it's costing like 30,000 or 40,000. Is that okay with the commission? And do you want the rest to be spent on educational materials and purchasing induction cooktops?
I like the
Yeah,
idea
You
of
mentioned
having
something with the website as well.
If you can do something with the website.
That's a good idea.
communication.
Did you really?
I do not, the website is on hold for a bit because
Oh.
they've lost their web designer.
Oh, I see.
So it's just simply a resource issue,
Okay.
The,
right? That's,
We're updating the website to a new platform and it's gonna be converted, it's currently being converted over, so we can't make any
So
updates
it's
to it
fresh.
until it's done. And then staff has to relearn how to use that platform and then we can,
Okay.
but those are free, like, we wouldn't pay for that unless we did a whole separate website for electrification.
I would, I'd make a comment, Greentown has a couple of induction cooktops that we bought for a loaner type program, and initially we got a number of people, but it's a hard push even to get people to loan. What we have done with other groups that I'm involved with, we use it as an enticement and have like just a drawing,
Yeah.
you come to our booth and we talk to you a little bit, here's a ticket, we're gonna have a drawing at the end of the thing and we're giving away a free induction
yeah,
cooktop.
maybe you want, that's good.
And we've done that effectively in a norm of a series of tabling. If you wanted to go to a loaner program, what I would suggest is perhaps maybe you talk to the library, say, because they have like a watt meter you could go and
Yeah.
get it, check it out. And so they may have a process for that and you say, okay, we'll give you the hardware, if you will.
Yes.
You manage the checkout.
That's one of the options I'd prefer for that, because it's the library, more people go to the library, and we have a library commission, so I can talk to Anthony.
You could do it there and then spend some of your money for the flyers or the says, check it out here.
Yeah, and I know that Aptera also runs a service where they'll do that program, and they provide the induction cooktops, but that's a monthly service that we'd have to pay for, so I don't think that's a good fit.
One thought is, some people would come to the Aptera presentations, if we're able to pull that off, is throw on a couple of induction.
Yeah,
stuff, give
raffle
people-
off, yes,
I think giveaways would be the best choice.
that's a good idea.
Good choice for them.
Yeah.
I would pick ones that work really well. If
Yeah.
if you don't get some of them make this humming sound, and I would suggest to have really good cookware to go with it. So that people understand that if they have the right cookware, and the right induction, it works really well, so.
That was another idea, is we can buy a pot or pan to go with it, because I think, I've never used induction, so please correct me,
Hot
you
important.
have to have a certain pan height.
Yes, and you have to have it right, because otherwise it makes this really irritating sound.
So we can do that if the commission's okay with that too.
Yes,
If you can provide me with models or brand or any type of,
Just flip the pot over and on the bottom it'll say that it's
Induction.
induction. Use it on induction.
I can send you what I use that works well, or if there's something that doesn't work well.
something affordable, yeah.
Oh,
Cast iron works really well.
Okay.
oh yeah, your grandmother's cast iron frying pan works just fine.
Stay flat, which is.
But it can be as simple as going to Marshall's, it doesn't have to be Revereware high-end stuff, you can get the pans for $10 or $15 at Marshall's.
Yeah. So I like the idea of giveaway, especially if you have a speaker series, definitely. And then having a couple at the library to check out, and that's not a bad idea.
Do they also handle promotion of the speaker series? I assume.
Tara,
Yeah,
yes, that's all included, which is all, I think the promotion of it is only is as good as what we do as a city or what promotion we have, which is not super robust. So, yeah, I'm waiting to get their proposal to see what exactly it is they'll provide. Or if they can just help us find speakers, because they have like a database of all of that. They're not the one speaking, they will if they can't find a speaker on the topic. So it's essentially consulting for them to help staff find and use their database on these speakers, and then yes, they promote it through our networks.
okay.
All good ideas. Just go use the fund we have. Okay. Which way?
Any other, comments?
I'll just say on the variances, I just really wanna see. Good evidence that there's gonna be enough natural space if the floor area ratio one is pursued in particular, that we're gonna have, but that just cause I'm certainly worried about the direction that we're going as a city with the ADUs, and this dovetails with that, so.
You said about encroachment on natural space or?
And just the proliferation of growth, which, no,
Built area as opposed to open area, also for
yeah.
flooding, et cetera.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the city, it's the state's method, so. Don't have them, don't have to.
I'll offer one comment for experience, because I replaced my water heater in November. And my son just replaced his HVAC and water heating system, and the contractor was complete, the job was complete and it's operational. And in both cases, permits were taken out with the city. And once the contractor notified that the work has been done, the time set for the inspection is 30 days out. In other words, in fact, I just got the notice today for my son. It says, well, we can, is the 17th of June okay with you for the city inspection? And so if the comment regarding expediting electrification things, I can raise my hand on two examples that the after the work is done and it's operating in the house, it's operational. It's to get a reservation for a permit for an inspection is 30 days.
Yeah, I would second any
And-
expedition. Whatever it
And,
is,
and
expediting.
that creates some problems with because when you go to get you reserve the rebate with Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and they give you so many days, and they're flexible and they work with you, but they give you so many days for the completion of the work, and the completion of the work includes a signed off permit.
Which is summary in order to help residents get their rebates quicker. We want to see if the inspectors could prioritize electrification permit
Yeah.
inspection.
And I could go on further, but do you know how long it takes the inspector to inspect? Or how many minutes they were at my house to look at the water heater installation? Well, if you count parking his car and then getting back in his car, maybe it was 10.
Yeah, so, yeah, those are things we wanna make it as simple.
And I'm not being critical here, I know they're busy and everything, but I'm trying to. How it integrates with getting the rebates and the timing to get this in, it does have some impact. My son's going through because, he's not gonna have it in time before his time runs out, so now he's talking with, can I get an extension? And the Silicon Valley Clean Energy people are very accommodating, and I have no doubt that they'll give me inspections, extensions.
Let's just clarify, that's the only impact is kind of the paperwork around getting the rebate. So he's living in the place.
Yeah, he's allowed to use it.
He's allowed to use it.
Yeah.
It's no. So
Yeah,
there's no- It's the only thing that it delays is it delays the paperwork and the processing.
So the other thing around that, I think, is this permitting, planning, building permits, all of these take a lot of time. If there is any way to add, oh, if you're going all electric or a full, or whatever, or if you're going HVAC, you get, like, if you get each cycle, it's 2 weeks or whatever weeks, they send it out, the building plans for review and comes back. If there is any way to speed that up, especially with the contractors, they would.
I'll raise
do what
my
they
hand
do.
and say the process for like a water heater is amazing. It's online. The minute you push the button, you have the permit. So it's online. When it was my son's, where it was a HVAC and water heating, it took a little bit longer. I don't have the exact timing, but I know the contractor had to go back and forth, with some information from the city before that permit was issued. How long that took, I don't exactly know, but the single water heater was on demand.
I'm talking about the remodels and the new builds.
Yeah.
To make them all electric without having reach codes. Incentive to do that.
Yeah, so
Fine.
in my understanding, the way that I heard them explain it is, if there's comments, so there's back and forth on the comments, and if the contractor isn't answering or providing what the questions and the comments are, it's usually on the contractor side where the delay happens. So the staff can't move forward if the contractor hasn't addressed what the comments are.
There's
So-
still a period of time that they have to reply, and I know this from experience, that they have to reply to comments. Which if it's shorter. will help.
Yeah, I'm not too in
Yeah.
the weeds of it, but that's just what I heard is. Yeah, they can't do anything unless the contractor has responded, and if they delay, then it delays the whole project, so. But I think that this idea, if we wanna bring it forward to the building official when we have the meeting. And hear what she has to say about that.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Nice.
We take staff and commissioner for some comments, not the meeting.
Okay. Do we go staff comments first? Commissioner?
Reports, council meetings.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at.
I was supposed to have last night, but I have not listened to that. Yep. So I don't know if any of you went or heard that.
I know people were commenting on gas leak blowers, but don't know all the specifics of it, but I know.
I think I can do both. Because I did the 22nd, I was to listen to the one for yesterday.
Oh, you did listen?
Yeah.
to this? Oh,
Okay.
we have you. Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
Huh?
Yeah, thank you.
I should tweet up the roster.
So it's what-
Yeah, so for the 22nd, like the environmentally related stuff, there was a presentation on the downtown park and parking project from Watery Design and MIG. This is the one, to turn the parking area into a park. I guess everyone knows about that. The good thing is, I think it's clear that they're also, what their proposal is really focused on, has like a strong environmental focus to it. So Looking at integrating like pollinator friendly plants, integration of natural water features, so all good stuff. The only discussion I think from the council, it was a lot around engagement with the community about the park, so that was really the focus of the presentation. But it seems like there's strong support for advancing the project. And then the other big discussion point was the Grant Park Transformer situation. So there was a couple of comments that brought up the environmental aspects of the development. And the city council did acknowledge the concerns from the residents and expressed the need for clear communication and dialogue with residents and utility providers to make sure we're balancing infrastructure needs with safety and environmental health. Apart from that, I didn't really catch much that was environmental related. I think on that one, if I'm not mistaken, on the consent calendar was the lighting.
Oh, just to finalize that.
Yeah, that wasn't discussed in any detail, so it's passed. The only thing I think that was discussed in the consent calendar was around the wording around this 5 million contribution to the theatre. Anyway, not environmentally related. And then for yesterday, there was, I think, a lot more talking points. So there was public comment on the Living Electric Fair, saying how great it was. The public commenter said that there were around 1,200 to 1,400 attendees, and I was volunteering in the booth, and so I think, you know, dramatic improvement over last year through the location. And then there was another public comment on electric vehicle charger policy and concerns around this, around basically the absence of a comprehensive EV charger policy in Los Altos compared to neighboring cities. So that was interesting. And then there were 3 public speakers on the gas leaf blower ordinance and enforcement challenges. So a lot of people, or 3, complaining that basically, and you know, this was also, some of them were from the Greentown Los Altos, basically saying that enforcement around this isn't what it needs to be. Kind of reiterating why it's there, so reducing air quality, noise pollution, and health risks associated with it. So that, you know, a lot of public comment around that.
Can I ask you, was the public comment mostly in that vein that we're not enforcing it enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think all 3 public speakers were saying the same thing around it's not being enforced enough. And then let me see what else. I mean, there was discussed around environmental sustainability and civic projects and public art. So the Arts Los Altos grant proposal to install a temporary interactive public art piece, and they wanted to focus on ocean fragility. So to kind of increase environmental awareness. So there was some support for this. I think that's all I've got. Yeah, so the reason the gas leaf blower ban was this, there was public comment, was there was an item on the consent calendar for this, which I think was around, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Tanya, you could, you know this, but it was around the proposal to somehow give the ban more prominence by separating it out from where it currently resides in the ordinances.
I'm not too sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a proposal which I think passed around giving it more prominence, so thus there was support, people saying yes, this is important. Yeah, that was it. I don't know if anyone else listened to the, or was there.
It's just thought that there was some zoning discussion, but I wasn't able to watch. So I don't know the confidence of.
Yeah. Was that the Sherwood Triangle? Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna plead ignorance and say I probably tuned out a little bit. It seems reasonable that there'd be an environmental angle for that, but I didn't really pick it up, sorry. Good, so I think I'm off duty for council updates now.
Was that it? Was that we have?
Info, roundtable, Rogers updates, updates.
Okay, can you go first? So touched on it already, follow up to the meeting with vice mayor and the city manager. We have four boss meeting. I had a meeting with the city manager, to review, the work plan again, and to make sure we were aligned with its goals, based on some feedback we got. The first round, and a couple things that we already talked about is, the member subcommittee. Then there was a general thing on subcommittees, which, that we need clarification from the city attorney, because city manager was suggesting that based on the Brown Act, because we can't have continuing jurisdiction over something. Since we've worked on the climate action adaptation plan, any continuing work on that plan cannot have an ad hoc subcommittee, which, totally did not agree with or understand how that could be, so we agreed that we would, check with the city attorney and maybe attorney if, there's reason for confusion. And then what, hopefully everybody has a chance to read the notice sent over, and that was forwarded over to, council by the city manager. And things in priorities, because we were asked to, but I didn't do order rank priority, I just did 1, 2, 3, because that's how we've done it in the past. So that, we don't put one above the other, so we choose one, cut everything down, so. Two things in priority level 1, where, we are before its ecosystem, and then building and electrification. Those were the two things where we had, dollar asks. And for, we already talked about the urban forest. For the building electrification, it was a 70 to 100K for, encouraging electrification, through monetary, non-monetary incentives. And that was based on previous discussion where we said we are inclined to support incentives. But I don't know if that's, maybe there's some clarification that needs to happen on that. But the city manager seemed to say, based on the budget items, is that, there is expected to be a continuing budget for electrification of the order of 50 to 75.
Per year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, these are expectations, no guarantees, and that there is potentially up to 250K in other high priority environmental commission goals. And before the meeting, since we didn't have priorities, he had assumed that it would go to the EV charging master plan. When I informed him that, we're not ready to have that funded, it would need some pre-work, and that's not the first thing we were working on, we didn't have resources and people. He agreed and said, okay, whatever your two top priorities touch, we will, propose to council, as things that need, funding. Then level 2, where transportation, in terms of, reducing, single occupancy vehicle travel, and deconstruction. And the city manager was very supportive of deconstruction. The other point on the transportation, the discussion came up was that we could not have liaisons to other commissions. And again, don't understand that, and I don't necessarily based on what's written in the handbook. But since that's, the guidance that we know so far, so I will not work as a liaison, a general liaison to any of the commissions. However, I can do individual commissioner work and reach out to other commissioners if I have questions. So it's some of the same work, but we're not allowed to have liaisons to other commissions. We can have liaisons to other groups, so that's yeah. And then the EV charging master plan was done. We didn't see how we would be able to get to it. With all the other stuff that we had, we were already working on. So that was related to that. I did have one meeting with the chair of the planning commission and planning director, Stephanie Williams, where we just talked about bringing cat codes as something that's salient and things they do when the chair. The planning commission agreed, and they thought that there was a lot of ground. We did talk about the rezoning projects. One of the examples where we talked about multi-use, the 15-minute city center plan, residential and commercial, and that's general thing. So it was a general agreement that yes, makes sense, but then if we have something specific, come to it, and have to restructure how we are as liaison versus just working on that one and then reaching out to questions. So that's that update, and then the third update is that Chloe is a high school student at Castellana. She's sophomore, I think. Yeah, and she had some challenges, having to take the train to go to school. She was Los Altos residents, and having her mom have to drop her to the station and still have to take the train. And getting around, having multiple not easy ways of public transit. So she done a little survey on a mini shuttle service, and whether that's something that people in Los Altos had. She had a phone response. She wanted to, and this was something that was supported or suggested by former council member Lee Yank. And then she had a meeting with council member Weinberg, and he was supportive as well, and suggested to do a bigger, more detailed survey and figure out what the routes are, kind of very similar to what is on our work plan around that. So I did a chat with her, and then what she wants from us is to help her promote the survey. There's no timeline to it, so we can figure out how we want to. We can look at the survey, which I'll send to Tonya, the modified survey, and send that out if there's comments, changes to it. And then we can talk about how we promote it at a later meeting, or when that topic comes on the agenda. So
Are we allowed to use it? Or is it because she's running it, we're allowed to?
Yeah, clarification on. She already created a survey.
yeah, she
She
had one,
created
she had a
the
brief
survey.
one, but then she has a more detailed one, which we can look at. One more update is that I had a meeting with person who does deconstruction or zero waste at Palo Alto, lots of good information, which present next time. We discuss that.
Next. I think I've said all the updates that I would need to say about the urban forest system. Then I'll just give a little update on Living Nature Fair. Coleman, not there. My honest, we were moved together. And yeah, I think general response has been really encouraging. That but I think we targeted a family demographic more, and certainly reached that demographic this time. And I think there's certainly plenty of signs that people were interested in a great variety of electrification from that event. So, and the steering committee has already met to reflect on it and is encouraged that they will want to move forward with this and do it again next year. And this last time they pretty much started in January, so they're very encouraged that with more time they can do even better work. Nice one. So.
Okay, let's cry.
No.
And Carl, the VR expert. How many kids did you run, or people did you run through the VR?
I think we counted it, wasn't it like, I don't know, 13 or something like that.
Yeah, 15, under 15 wasn't that many.
Yeah, it was good that we asked for 2 headsets because we needed the second one for its battery that was charged already.
I don't know if we gave an update on that last time about the VR, did we?
I didn't know about it.
Oh, okay.
You wanna talk a little bit about?
Sure. So, well, it's through some connection you have with Cupertino that we knew that Cupertino got a grant through SBCE that they were able to create this VR game, Cooper's Clean Air Quest, which essentially it's a robot that's guiding you through this house and you get to clean up the emissions and then the appliance magically turns into its electric counterpart. And so we were just, helping people walk through that and, when there's a parent, we show them what's going on the screen so they can see what's going on. And, we had one adult who afterwards said like, oh yeah, I guess I could replace that appliance. So it certainly has great potential to open people's eyes to what they could be changing.
Yeah, thank you to Carl for coming with me to Cupertino to test the game out and being willing to manage that at the event.
Yeah.
So much more patient than I am.
That's what we should have spent budget on. The vote
I
game,
know.
Los Alamos
Yeah.
game, Cupertino.
A couple $100,000. Not the session, but.
Yeah, the kids events, I think, were a big hit. I think a lot of people also walked through the vendors booths. I don't know what the car was, got some attention,
The
that,
Tello.
yeah, the truck.
Huh?
What kind of truck was it?
It's a mini truck.
Oh, mini truck?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The 10 minutes that I did walk around there, I was trying to find it. I didn't see it, but
So clarifying question, you said that the committee, the planning committee wants to do it again?
they right now, yeah, all the parties are interested in doing this again.
Excellent.
they're not fun, I don't think it was all that expensive. I know Connie's still gathering together all the details, but I don't think, a lot of people chipped in.
Yeah, there's a good amount spent on design. Some of that we have, the framework already this time, so we do think that it could be a lower budget and higher quality next time. But I think we'll see.
Commissioner, do you have any updates? You want to give?
No.
Commissioner?
No.
No. Just thanks to Carl for getting that, keeping that fair moving. That's,
Yeah.
that's great.
Staff updates? Yeah, so this is more processes. I think I said I'd clarify this last time, but, so for agenda setting and document submission deadlines, so Vice or Chair Ryan, has requested that we meet 2 weeks before the meeting to set the agenda, so that's what we've been doing. So, and at that agenda setting meeting, we create the agenda based on the voted on items. And so the ask is that commissioners are responsible for reviewing the list of the voted on items and notifying me before that meeting, before the agenda setting meeting, if they want a specific item to be considered for the upcoming meeting agenda. Okay, so
Of the things that we have introduced in this public meeting first, right?
yeah, so like I've been putting it in the note, the meeting minutes of like the list.
Right.
So whatever's voted on, whatever we voted on and approved, if you want to see that in an upcoming meeting, please let me know 2 weeks before the meeting, so that 2 weeks and 1 day before. Yeah, 2 weeks and 1 day.
So
before
you're
the
just looking for us to confirm that we wanna keep that in the meeting. So like if we say we want electrification on the next meeting, you're asking us for 2 weeks before the next meeting to say, yes, we still want that?
I think yes, but also a lot of the times we put like May or June or 2 different months,
Mm.
so I wasn't sure if the electrification, subcommittee was gonna have an update, cause we put May or June in the note,
Well, I think we put May and June.
May and June, okay.
That was the intent,
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken.
so yeah, just to confirm, and if, and some of these don't have dates, so more specifically on the things that we don't have a specific date decided on at the previous meeting, if you can just email me and let me know before.
Yeah.
2 weeks and a day. Okay, and then the second thing is for document submission. So now going forward, all background materials and information for the agenda packet, if you can please submit it to me by Monday, 5 p.m.
Which,
The Monday before the meeting,
Oh,
so,
10 days before, roughly,
uh,
but the Monday,
7 business days or something.
yeah, 7 days, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so for the next meeting, I think it's June 2nd. June 2nd,
So that's for the material that will go in the packet.
Yeah,
yes.
It would be good if we put something about, to have smoother discussion, to put something in the packet so folks know what's coming. And it can change till the presentation, right? Yeah, so I think with the meetings, just to add to that, the agenda items, if we decide at a meeting before that this is what's gonna happen, what we want to do next week, that should be penciled in. And but if there's any change or anything additional that anybody would like to see, that needs to get to Tanya more than 2 weeks.
Then we let you know directly, right? This is-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and yeah, all communication was.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I bring up all we kind of pull it up and look at all of the ones that we voted on and then decide based on that.
Okay.
And I can send an email to reiterate this as well. So you can see it in writing and everything else. The third thing is for PowerPoints, there's a new PowerPoint template and I'll send that out for everyone to use. And then sad news is that we didn't get the SBC grant. So,
When was that?
building electrification. So,
it was for their
sorry, so,
demonstration grant. Yeah,
Oh.
their competitive
Oh, fine.
demonstration grant.
did they tell you why, or did they give you any feedback yet?
They essentially said they went with other projects that I guess they felt was more robust, engagement, but I think Sunnyvale was awarded the same exact thing, but they were awarded $1 million for solar panel and battery, but for the fire station. So they had said that they'll do engagement, the firefighters will do engagement on it, which I guess sounds more appealing than City Hall.
Everyone loves a fireman.
Sorry?
Everyone loves a fireman.
Yes. Again, thank you, Tom, for all your
No
help
problem.
with that. Grants are a lot of work, unfortunately, but we don't have for that. And I want to thank finance. They helped me a lot in getting a lot of the numbers and, so it wasn't just me. It takes a lot of different staff to even just do a grant. So I appreciate them helping me and taking time out of their day. And then another update is something exciting, so in June, I'll be going to Thailand to, do the Waisili Professional Fellows Program, which is a federal program, where East Asian fellows can come to the US and the city, can host them. So the city hosted them, last June. And then, they focus on sustainability and stuff. And so that was in a program that I entered into, the city manager, like this, the city manager's office did that, and then. I helped because their focus is in sustainability. So, the fellow that we had, I helped her develop a project, you submit they submit a project and they can get chosen for funding, and her project got chosen for funding. And she's invited me to go and help her, implement the project. So I will be gone, for about 3 weeks in June, but it won't affect the commission because I'll be leaving after the June meeting, but I just wanted to let you all know. And I will be working remotely, so I will respond to emails and stuff like that. Yes, so it'll be, yeah, I think,
Now you get to work 24/7.
yeah, exactly. So it's exciting. I can provide a presentation if the commission's interested in learning more. But yeah, I just specifically wanted to let you know that I will not be here during that time. But the commission is off during that time as well, so there's no meeting in July. Yeah, that's all my update.
Cool.
That's a discussion.
Yeah, and so we can look at potential future agenda items.
I'd be curious to do a check-in on how we're feeling about the outreach plan we talked at the beginning of the year. And just sort of see if we need to try to structure, we said we do a little more. Or, you know, at least allow us to talk about what we're thinking about. I think would be good.
So outreach plan.
Check-in slash brainstorm slash.
And I don't think anyone's working on that right now, so.
No, no, no.
Okay. So it'll be just to narrow it down a little more to kind of talk about starting the work back up again.
I think we're reviewing what we had planned to do and troubleshooting slash figuring out how we're gonna deliver on what we planned in that.
I think that's a good idea.
We should do that next meeting.
That's, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
We have to put it on the agenda and then. As a potential future agenda item, at the next meeting, we have to say it's gonna be an agenda item, right? So it couldn't come on the next meeting, on the June meeting.
No, it can.
Because we're gonna,
Okay.
Mhm.
What, I mean, the SPP update.
Yes, so, yeah, we already have this as a potential future agenda item. But SVCE confirmed, I reached out to them and coordinated with them, they'll come in June. To specifically talk about the full service program and they might have some other dates.
We need to talk about stuff that are already potential future agenda items. 'Cause I'm just looking through this list now, and there's a lot of stuff on that.
Yes, so we can't have any discussion, you can suggest when you'd like to see that to come back. But right now, it's mostly like new agenda items.
Okay.
So we're adding to that list? No,
Okay.
adding to the list, go around and. Some of these,
Mhm.
you wanna pull something to the top, is that what you're saying?
If you want to put a date to something, suggest a date.
So I'd like to add a transportation. Um. Update. Whatever it is. Not the. And not the EV, master plan, but the more walkable, bikeable city. Slash.
Which,
That's the.
the pro.
It's, yeah. transportation, whatever.
I don't think we have any name, but the promote walkable and bikeable city. Part of that project.
Yeah, reduce carbon emissions by reducing single occupancy vehicle travel. So that includes walkable bicycles, bikeable city and shared mobility.
Is everyone? Useful. Any more additions or?
I mean, do we need to discuss what Gary from Greentown proposed interns? I kind of like that suggestion. Like bring the interns that are working on related topics so the commission can introduce themselves.
Yes, so we have that.
That's usually, right? Is that already?
Yes.
Okay.
Did he confirm? That was June?
I think so.
Deconstruction. Will come out.
Includes an update on the agenda. If I don't have anything, then we try.
Okay, so it's already there. Electrification subcommittee, no update.
I thought we
Not
went
I thought you said
subcommittee.
and.
We're a working plan now.
Alright,
Got downgraded.
sorry. No, long day.
You lost the man.
Sorry. The working
Sad.
pair, and I'll have to update this, yeah, this table. Urban forest,
I don't think, it sounds like we were the sixth item, and I
okay,
think I'll want the extra time to.
so next meeting, just update us on the new work plan. I mean. Will that need to come back in June?
But maybe we should put it there, if we have any feedback from council. Slash city manager slash budget. We should have, to discuss that.
Okay. We can, yeah, give it a,
Work plan slash budget discussion.
and when we set the agenda, we can discuss that. and then- Trying to think of anything else. Before. So that's the last meeting. It's August.
One thought, and I don't know how to say this apart from Don doesn't have a specific research item. Would we need to discuss as a commission, like how to promote? Basically.
I think he can come, he can decide, so the way the work compares individual work is that he can start on work and then update the commission at the next meeting
Okay,
during the commissioner's reports and updates.
okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Okay, and also in case we get more feedback on the process, maybe we can put a future agenda on clarifying process for subcommittees working here. Maybe some.
And I can also look for stuff like that, if it comes up, like, I can put it on the agenda, like staff can put it on the agenda.
Without it being a future
Yeah.
agenda item, okay.
Yeah.
I wonder we should, so other things that we had on the work plan, I given it's already gonna be, is to review cap priorities, should we consider us taking up different parts of the cap that we wanna take as homework for the summer? To see if there's anything changed that needs to happen. Review, update cap. Or discuss how we're gonna, go through updating the cap. Or go through the cap to see if there's anything that needs updating.
I would like to know if the council is receptive to that before we go down it, just because based on when we brought it up at that meeting, it didn't seem like they understood that that was within our purview to do, or like how it would work, so,
Well, hopefully. I was able to convince the city manager
okay.
and the vice mayor. Yeah, so we can put it as an item for discussion.
Right.
The discussion could be that it's not something they want us to do, or it could be that. It's okay, you know, we should be doing it and then. Are we okay with having that as a future agenda?
That would have to be next month, right?
We can just put it off.
Yeah, or
If there's
someone
nothing
can
to
take
report.
initiative of doing, of presenting, doing individual work and presenting that to the commission in August, and what that would look like.
Yeah, so in June, if we can kind of. Tentatively decide, you know, so that we're not doubling up the work if one of us is focusing on one section. Somebody else can choose to focus on a different section, that's kind of what I'm hoping. So,
Can you, rephrase that? I don't know.
um.
Can-
Determine. Um. Discuss process. For any updates to CAP if needed.
Is that, how many items is that for next month?
For next one, two, three, four,
Okay.
not including, so 5 would be SVC, 6 would be electrification subcommittee. Sounds like 6.
Okay.
Actually, confirm.
Tomorrow. Well, hopefully the cafe will be open by then. All right, are we done? Should be a check. Yes. This meeting is adjourned. 15 minutes late again.
Not bad.